shifting the spotlight. I am super excited to be here. Of course, when Melissa brought this to my attention, I immediately jumped at the opportunity because, as I mentioned, and I'm sobbing about now, Nadine meant so much to me. As a Black woman in this industry, I felt alone more times than I can count, and Nadine welcomed me with open arms. Um, so let me jump into kind of what's why we're here. We are here today on the last day of Black History Month, squeezing it in. Here we go, to really, celebrate the impact and the influence of Black administrative professionals. This industry is over 90% female, and it's created amazing opportunities for so many of us by providing a unique avenue into all kinds of industries. Um, but we cannot celebrate Black admins without acknowledging one of the most important figures in this community, and that is Nadine King. Nadine was the founder and leader of Black Admin Magic. And for those of you who were a part of that amazing moment in professional administrative support history, you know that the energy was positively electric for Black Admin Magic. So much excitement and investment went into that, and she was able to create this amazing opportunity for us to come together, connect, and build an incredibly robust network to support each other across our careers. She was an outspoken and necessary voice in the community, not just shining a light, but also making space for other voices to be heard, including mine. As I said, Nadine welcomed me with both arms wide open. She held me up. She encouraged me. She supported the work that I was doing for the broader EA community. And I really just owe so much to her. And I know that so many of you all feel the same as well. I'm pretty sure so much of what I've done in this community would not have been possible with her. So it's really, really great to be here to celebrate and honor her legacy within this community. It's important for us to build community as administrative professionals, as Black administrative professionals, to recognize all of the value that we're creating in this industry, but also, as I mentioned, making those really powerful connections that really will pay dividends for all of you down the line. And I think now is a really great time to be having this. We're still kind of, we're still in Q1 and we're really early on in the year, but I know I'm not the only one who is feeling these kinds of monumental shifts that are happening, not just socially, but also technologically as well, that are directly impacting our career. And if you haven't felt that impact, it will soon be, at your doorstep. So I think this is a really critical moment and an opportunity for us to kind of seize that and sort of get ahead of the curve here. Okay, so, but who am I and what's my story? As I mentioned, I've been working as an executive assistant for over a decade in a variety of industries. To Melissa's earlier point, there weren't many, I don't know if there weren't many of us or there just wasn't a lot of visibility for Black executive assistants and professional administrative support folks. So I really got into this space hoping to strengthen my network, but also elevate my own thinking about the evolution of the role. So I've had the opportunity to work in a variety of industries across Silicon Valley. I started kind of my big girl portion of my career working at a small nonprofit. From there, I moved to supporting the CEO of Sephora and other well-known, globally recognized brands, that are doing well over $1 billion in valuation. And I moved from there, advancing and exploring other career opportunities, including becoming a certified chief of staff with Oxford University, as well as moving into the head of operations and COO role for a Silicon Valley-based startup in the blockchain industry. So I've worked in corporate retail, small nonprofits, to crypto and blockchain, and everywhere in between. And now I am the founder and CEO of my own startup that is currently in stealth mode, that is launching this year, and I'm super excited about that. But like many of you, I sort of fell into this job. I had no college degree. some, experience, but really a whole lot of grit, curiosity, and a passion for the role. And I think that if you have those kinds of characteristics, this role offers endless opportunities for you to expand and grow. And I definitely feel that I'm living proof of that. So you don't need you don't necessarily need to come into this role with a ton of fancy titles or education, but there's still so much opportunity for you to grow, elevate, evolve into a version of yourself that you probably don't even see right now. And I know that's been true for me. So today I'm really excited to kind of continue both the work that Melissa and of course Nadine have done in creating forums and communities to encourage this group of administrative support professionals. But before we begin those sessions, I want to share a few of my own insights from years, obviously, being in this role. I think these tips will be particularly valuable for those who are career curious here. You kind of settled into this role and you're looking to grow your career. So these tips really represent my reflections on what it takes to level up and, more importantly, to stay there. The heart of really what I'm going to be talking about, and this is on your screen now, is really ownership. And I know that term gets thrown around a lot. Like, you need to take ownership of your career, you need to take ownership of your life, and it is valuable advice. But I found that what really resonates with me, and the feedback, honestly, I've gotten from others supports this insight, is that, as much as we all benefit from, knowing what to do, we benefit a lot more from knowing how we can actually execute those, pearls of wisdom. And I say that ownership is really the thing here, but we're going to be talking about what ownership actually looks like and how you execute owning your own career and the outcomes in your workspace. Because we don't actually write our lives with our words, we write them with our actions. So if we just say we're taking ownership, no one knows specifically if we are. They're going to look to the actions that we're taking to determine whether it looks like ownership and evaluate our contributions. So this is really about the how of ownership. So these are my top three consolidated, really concise, bite-sized insights, because we have to keep moving and getting on. So the first one is going to be a gap check. This is really about understanding and cultivating the ability and habit of asking highly insightful, valuable questions to identify gaps and opportunities for improvement. These questions really kind of act as a diagnostic tool to sort of assess your current situation and pinpoint the areas for growth. So you want to define your current situation, and almost everything that you're going to do in your work is going to be able to be kind of divided down to these core components. So what is the status quo and what's the desired situation? What's the goal here? And I always try to work backward from the goal. So you want to make it measurable. You're going to ask yourself, what is the gap? How can we make it measurable? What numbers can we put to it? What are the indicators that are going to tell us that this is going well, the trends are working in our favor, or they're not? One of the things that I've found over the course of my career is developing my ability to be really insightful about the different strategic perspectives you can have or you can take in orienting yourself towards any problem is one of the things that's going to distinguish you, but it also helps to make you the accountable person for those things. The second thing is excellence over expectation. So understanding excellence over understanding expectations. And I know this sounds counterintuitive, and I'll get into why that's actually not the case. So information is the currency that drives every organization, or at least that's my contention. This includes who knows what information is shared, when is it shared, how is it shared? Is it shared in a one-on-one? Is it shared in a town hall? Is it shared in a warm room, a feedback session, etc.? And where we sit on the highway of information can deeply impact us. But we aren't always in control of where we sit on the highway, the information highway, or how the flow of information comes to us. But we can be strategic about what information we seek. And this is kind of the real nugget of gold here is you're not going to, at the end of this, we're not all going to be promoted and, be told everyone's going to now start downloading us on everything because we've become a trusted advisor. We don't always get to determine that, but we can determine what information we seek out, and we need to be very strategic about it. So understanding expectations is very important and valuable and key in contributing early on in your career. That's one of the things, if you've heard anything I've ever said or read my blog, I advocate for folks really diving in and making sure that they understand what is expected of them, and then they document and track their progress against those expectations. It's not just a great way to protect yourself, but it's also really great for developing a repository of your wins, and your own like wisdom and knowledge repository. Like, hey, what did I learn on that last project? So I've always advocated for understanding expectations, but it's and documenting your work progress against those expectations. But this is incredibly valuable for the early part of your career. If you're interested in evolving, leveling up, or career growth, what's more important and more valuable than understanding expectations and getting clear expectations from your boss is understanding your organization's perspective and definition of excellence. This is essential in order to level up and stay there. So a lot of you probably get these performance feedback sessions where there's, basically a grading system, you meets most expectations, exceeds expectations. You always want to be in the exceeds expectations category. But it's not just enough to do more work, right? It can feel good like, oh, well, they expected me to do these 3 things and I actually did 6 things. Well, if the things 4, 5, and 6 aren't things that are valuable to your organization, no one really wants you to be doing them. They're not sustainable, meaning if you leave, this initiative dies, they're going to see a lot less value in that. But if you start to understand how your organization defines excellence, the contributions that you add to exceed expectations might only be one additional thing, but that's highly valuable. And the other thing that you want to couple with this is the quality of your work. So understanding what your organization values and then making sure you're delivering that in high quality ways. I think this is probably kind of the meat of the sandwich here, but this is probably the most valuable thing you can do in terms of like positioning yourself as a strategic thinker to create momentum, generate the momentum to move your own career forward without waiting for your manager to acknowledge your work. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. So this is a really important key. Feel free to take notes or write it in the chat. I'm not really looking at the chat right now, but I hope that you feel free to follow up with me in details on this later. So you want to be striving to not just meet your expectations in your performance review, but really dissect and understand how your organization defines excellence, bring value to them in those specific areas by delivering it like 1 or 2 strategic things in a highly qualitative way. And then the third thing for taking ownership is to grow outside the box. So this is might feel a little bit like fluffy and amorphous, but in reality, this is one of the most potent things you can do, is to let yourself dream. And Nadine was actually incredibly good at creating space for people to do exactly that. So you really want to allow yourself the freedom to explore beyond the conventional boundaries of your role. You need to embrace curiosity as a catalyst for innovating in your own role. That's something that I did. You want to explore the outer bounds of your imagination about what's possible. Because if you don't, what you'll continue to deliver is sort of, the meets expectations. When you're growing outside the box, it means you're pulling from a multitude of disciplines around your organization, professional disciplines around your organization, and you're synergizing them in ways that will help direct your career towards the ends that you desire. So this is an opportunity for you to consider not just attending, forums like these, but project management forums, data analysis forums, understanding how to create a multidisciplinary approach to the way that you work. And you'll start to find yourself and people being gravitated towards the kinds of contributions that you're making. Okay, so those are my top 3 tips for growing outside the box. Now I want to get into why this matters. Okay, we're all going to say this probably multiple times, but as I mentioned earlier, we're on the cusp of an unprecedented transformation. In the coming years, you'll notice changes accelerating at a pace that feels almost like we're going into a time warp. And I think Ray Dalio was talking about this a couple days ago on a podcast. Um, this is the fastest, most intense period of transformation our species has ever experienced. What used to happen over centuries is now measured in years. So there's such a significant compression of the amount of and the exponential rate of change is happening in such a compressed time frame that it's difficult to describe this as anything other than a time warp. Um, Embracing this transformation matters for your career and your personal growth. And I know this is like a broad statement, but I want to ground this in some practical examples to help craft a very clear picture of what's happening. Microchips kind of give us a glimpse into these trends, right? So in the 1940s, when microchips were first being put on transistors, you could fit about 1 to 5 microchips on a transistor, right? So how much compute power were you getting? Not much, right? By the 1970s, we went from 1 to 5 to 4,000 microchips per transistor, right? Then we get into the 1990s. Now we're talking about 1 million to 4 million transistors. By the 2000s, it's 40 million transistors. And in 2020, it's 40 billion transistors. So we're talking about an exponential amount and increase in compute power that like heretofore is literally unimaginable. What we were doing in the 70s, what we were doing in the 90s now looks like child's play, which is just absolutely mind blowing to think of. But I really want folks to understand the underlying principles of how we're getting to where we're at. This is grounded not in like software and, to I think Ben Horowitz or Micah Andreessen's post on software is eating the world speaks to this idea that like, yes, software is kind of emerging everywhere and it is eating the world. But in terms of the capabilities of our species from a hardware perspective, we're now also like in exponential territory, which is just crazy to think of like where we will actually be in 5 years. So why this matters is that one of the things that has defined been a hallmark of my own practice as a professional support person, moving into chief of staff and head of operations, has been to figure out how to respond instead of react. The amount of change that's taking place is going to feel jolting to a lot of people. But if we want to be able to get into a position, we want to be able to position ourselves where we're responding to those changes instead of reacting, feeling lost and unmoored and disjointed. These kinds of forums, attending these kinds of forums, engaging in these kinds of this kind of discourse helps to ground those changes in something that feels tangible and faceable. We are looking for practical, not solutions, but approaches to integrating this kind of technology in a way that is exponentially beneficial for us, not just the people creating the technology, right? Participating in and building and benefiting from a future-ready community will pay dividends down the line. I can promise you that right now. Connecting with people who are sitting kind of at the nexus of this change will help to broaden your own field of vision and also help to give you the tools that you need and support that we all need in times of great change and transformation. And then finally, of course, to my point earlier, information really is the currency, not just within organizations, but across, human interaction. So making sure that we're staying informed helps to empower us so that we're not caught on the back foot. So